And I can tell you, if we come up with an energy plan that looks at liquid coal, more nuclear, increased drilling, that is not a balanced energy plan. That is another failed policy of the past. We need to start looking at the future, and that's what we would be doing entering into this Western Climate Initiative. The long-term costs of inaction are much greater than any cost of acting now. And we were shown that time and time again this weekend at the conference. You're talking about loss of productivity from crops and fertile land. We're talking again about massive water shortages, which I can't stress enough is the biggest problem facing the Western United States right now. We're talking about a skiing industry that supports a lot of the Western states that as it loses its snowpack will be decimated. And again, we think about here in Arizona, Flagstaff, the White Mountains, those economies depend on that tourist season. Without that snowpack, it will decimate those economies. And we talk about, again, the long-term healthcare costs, the long-term quality of life costs, and other associated costs with climate change, and again, with our continued dependency on oil. Entering into this Western Climate Initiative is essential for Arizona. I think that the governor has shown very progressive and aggressive leadership on this issue, and I think she will continue to do so. And once we enter into this agreement, it is up to us as legislators to make sure that the policies are implemented, that we follow the rules, that we're working with the other states and the Canadian provinces entered into this agreement, and make sure we live up to the reductions in greenhouse gas emissions that we are setting over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And as Representative Farley mentioned, I hope that every single voter considers that when they're voting this election, because it's absolutely critical we elect candidates and leaders who will support climate initiative change and who will work for true change in terms of our national energy plan. And I think with that, we're going to wrap it up and take any questions.
Thank you, Representative Campbell, Representative Sinema, Representative Farley, and I, and other stakeholders are here to field any questions from anyone in the audience. I'd just like again to reiterate that this isn't a bipartisan issue. This is an issue that representatives all across the country truly care about protecting their families in the future, protecting the hopes of their grandchildren to actually live in a climate and environment that can sustain the type of life we're living now. And that's why we care about these issues. That's why we're here today. That's why we're calling upon Congress. So we'd like to...
Did you say it is or is not a bipartisan issue?
This is certainly not a bipartisan issue.
I think he means it's not a
Oh,
bipartisan issue.
it is a bipartisan issue.
That's what I'm on. That's what
Sorry.
Okay.
The issue of climate change is not a partisan issue. It's an issue that, right, it's an issue that no matter what your voter registration form is.
Come to the microphone.
Doesn't get to that far.
Okay. This is clearly not a partisan issue. Every single one of us on this planet, whether you're a registered Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whether you live in another country and are registered to vote in that country, it doesn't matter what your registration or your affiliation is. Every single one of us are suffering from the lack of action that we have been watching here on our planet, and particularly here in the United States.
You quoted a survey in which you extrapolated Arizonans' opposition to drilling as a long-term solution. But were they asked if they opposed drilling directly?
Yes, and in fact, you can take a look at the results of this poll yourself. It was conducted on behalf of the Union of Concerned Scientists, July 19th through 23rd, just this year in 2008, and it covered all of the Western regional states. There is a website where you can actually go and view the results from the website. I'd be happy to get that to you.
But you can't tell me how many Arizonans though directly said we oppose offshore drilling?
Oh, well, I can tell you that very clearly. Let me get the data out here again. That 90% of Arizonans support reducing our dependency on oil.
No, that's not the question. The question is how many said we oppose offshore drilling?
If you let me finish the sentence, I'd get there. Okay, great. So 90% of Arizonans want to reduce their dependence on oil. They in particular want to reduce their dependence on foreign oil, and that's true for people throughout the country. Arizonans do support a small, very limited amount of temporary drilling, but only as a bridge to creating long-term energy solutions that involve clean and renewable sources. That's true for Arizonans and it's true across the country. There is not a majority of support for people to engage in offshore drilling in our country.
Okay, now, you all are calling for a balanced energy plan. Does the plan also include a call for any sort of drilling or even nuclear power plants being built as part of that portfolio?
We anticipate that the plan that Representative Pelosi will unveil later this week will include a limited amount of expansion of drilling in the United States. I personally can tell you that I think that Expanding drilling in our country is not good for us either in the short term or the long term, but we do anticipate that the congressional legislation will involve a limited amount of expansion of drilling. That limited amount, I will tell you, is clearly not enough for the Republicans in Congress who've already gone full bore against Pelosi's plan, showing where their true interests lie. They support big oil. They do not support alternative energy sources.
And so you all are asking our Congress, our congressional delegation, to continue supporting banning any additional offshore drilling?
What we are asking for Congress to do is to look for a balanced long-term energy plan that focuses on the future of our country, and that future will not be sustained by drilling. It can only be sustained by engaging in clean and new technologies with clean and renewable energy sources.
So, congressmen and senators who vote for a plan that includes offshore drilling, should they be supported in the coming election, or should they be opposed in the coming election?
I think you're going to get a different answer from every single person in this group, but I can tell you what my answer would be. And that is a member of Congress who supports a balanced energy plan that places the greatest emphasis on creating long-term renewable energy sources is the kind of congressperson I want to vote for.
If I can just add, I think the American people are smart enough to realize that even if we open up everything imaginable offshore drilling, regardless of consequences to the environment or anything else, that oil is not going to come online for decades. And studies have shown that it's not actually going to affect the cost of oil. So we're going to be able to pay the same amount or higher than we are paying now, and we'll have put a lot more environment at risk. The most important thing is we will have extended out the time in which we should be spending preparing for what happens when we do run out of oil. Everyone agrees, including the oil companies, we're going to run out of oil, we're going to do it soon. And the longer we wait to transition to clean, renewable alternatives, the more trouble we're going to get in when we get there. So that's what leadership is about. If leaders want to allow more drilling in the short term, in my opinion, they're fine doing that as long as their long-term goal is to be able to come up with the alternatives that will get us out for the next century, the next 2 centuries, to make sure that as we transition into a whole new phase of our economy, that we're going to do it without hurting our people unnecessarily.
Of course, the people that are in favor of drilling now would say that had we done it decades ago, we'd have that oil now, so we might as well start.
Well, had we done solar in the 70s when we started doing that, we wouldn't have to worry about oil in the first place.
The same poll that Representative Sinema was talking about, the question is asked of people whether or not they think gas prices are going to come down in the near future. Across the board, nobody believes gas prices are coming down. And they asked it in multiple ways, multiple scenarios. And again, every time it held true, 85 to 90% of people in every Western state asked said, gas prices are no longer going to be affordable for us. We need to start looking at other sources. And I can tell you, we're looking at the last quarter of profits here for the oil industry. Increased drilling won't solve the problem. It's only going to increase profits for the oil industry. We've seen that. ExxonMobil made more profits than any other corporation in the history of America the last quarter, and yet they're the ones saying, we have to charge these prices because it's part of our expense. That's not true. Look at the bottom line of that company. It's not true. And Americans see through that.
Any other questions? Nothing, Matt. Okay.
That's all I have.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank our partners especially for coming out and standing with us as we interact here at the state capitol, believing that this globe is undertaking some major climate change is not a given. There's representatives that still don't believe that. And so we have a lot of convincing to do to let them first recognize that there is a looming national threat to our nation, that there is a threat to Americans and our grandchildren, and then we need to act. We need Congress to act with us. So thank you all for coming out. Thank our partners and our representatives for the work that they have done.